Why was I able to predict that Trump would bring us to war in Iran and Trump voters did not? Because Trump voters are part of the scam. They are suckers. They were tricked because they listen far too much to what is said online by influencers, which is effectively a form of soft lobbying. If you didn't see this coming, if you underestimated the possibility or the inevitability that this would happen, it is probably because your information diet, the opinion makers that you follow, this is an artifice which is put in front of you by special interest groups. Why was this not on your radar? Why did you underestimate the likelihood this would happen? It's because probably your timeline has been curated by an algorithm to show you a very particular perspective, a very particular frame of the Trump administration. And that frame is a scam. It is wrong. The reason I called it right is because I didn't follow Trump's speeches and his influencers and his cadre of soft lobbyists on social media. I followed the money. I followed the institutional capture. I followed those associations, which are defining. And if you looked very closely at those things on a very specific timeline, it should have been obvious that this was inexorable. It wasn't going to go any other way. But like I said, more on that in a moment. We're going to start by talking about what happened last night. So last night, I believe it was a little after midnight Central Time, so it was maybe 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Eastern Time, the U.S. and Israel launched a joint strike on Iran. And many people saw this coming. It was pretty clear. Based on the military buildup in the Middle East, the deployment of 2 aircraft carriers, the USS Gerald Ford and the Abraham Lincoln, over a dozen destroyers, you had 50% of the U.S. deployable air power in the Middle East at the time that the conflict broke out. In addition, the United States and Israel had made steps to bolster their defenses. They deployed missile defense systems like Patriot missile batteries and THAAD systems. The U.S. moved its troops out of harm's way, called on diplomatic personnel at embassies to evacuate. Israel opened bomb shelters. So it was very clear, as you know, that since those protests in January, about a month and a half ago, when the United States moved to deploy all this military power in the region, that we were moving towards war. And last night, we finally got it. And so the U.S. and Israel launched, I believe now the tally is over 1,000 airstrikes on Iran. It appears that the U.S. and Israel have suffered no casualties. They have complete air superiority over the western half of the country. They claim they will have air superiority over the rest of the country within 24 hours. The U.S. and Israel targeted regime targets, so centers of government, command and control, military leadership, fortified bunkers. They also targeted nuclear sites. And that's not just Fordo, Esfahan, and Natanz, which is where they enrich the uranium, but also Bushehr, where Iran operates a Russian-provided nuclear power plant. And lastly, they targeted, and this is the big one, regime military assets. So missile launch platforms, their missile manufacturing cities, where they actually have underground an entire city to build their missiles. The U.S. targeted their Navy, targeted their defense ministry, their intelligence ministry, the executive function of the military, and all the hardware. Very shortly after the strikes began, and rumors surfaced of this on social media, video was posted, the president made a statement. And I have to tell you, this was the most disturbing, surreal thing I think I've witnessed maybe since the COVID pandemic. And if you saw this live, you know what I'm talking about. The president posted a formal address last night announcing the operation and discussing the goals of the operation and some expectations about what will happen. And he announced it wearing no necktie, in a baseball cap that says USA, in front of a black curtain by himself. And without getting too much into this quite yet, because we will arrive there eventually, there is something particularly surreal when you measure and weigh the gravity of the situation and its significance for the United States. Obviously, the United States has been involved in the Middle East for a very long time, doing exactly this sort of thing. Regime change, proxy warfare, fighting terrorism ostensibly, deploying massive amounts of air, sea, and ground power. And the entire conceit of this MAGA movement of President Trump, the whole reason we're doing this, nominally, this was supposed to be in opposition to the Iraq War and to the legacy of the Iraq War and all of the other associated interventions. Now, we know that the same people that were behind the war in Iraq, they're the same people that have been beating the drum for war in Iran for just as much time. And they have tried to pressure many presidents into doing this, and they have moved the United States closer to a conflict like this. And so Trump, being the one who was supposed to challenge and oppose all of this, who repudiated it and created this successful political movement, now to be delivering for the same people, repudiating those people and their agenda, for him now to be serving them, delivering for them what they have wanted for so long. Number one on their wish list. It's actually disturbing. It's disturbing what it says about how our country works, whether we, the people, are still in control. Is this a government of, by, and for the people? Do elections matter? Does the popular will matter in our representative democracy, in our republic? If we vote to repudiate a policy, a foreign interest group, a special interest group, repudiate a particular agenda, and we get that agenda anyway, that war, those people, regardless, what does that say about the political state, the actual true political reality of the United States of America? If anything, it just verifies what Trump said from the very beginning, which is that we are no longer in control. The people are no longer sovereign. And we knew that. That is something that we had always known and we had always suspected. This is confirmation. This is an illegitimate regime. The Constitution, representative democracy, our republic is effectively over. You can vote for a candidate that repudiates the global war on terror, the war in Iraq, regime change, someone that explicitly promises not to bring us into new conflicts. Someone that explicitly campaigns as the peace president, no new wars, and you'll get all of it anyway.
Exactly what he's saying. It reminds me of what Putin said one time. He said that he liked Trump's. He said, I love Trump. I love these specific politicians sometimes. But it's until then when the people in the black suits come in and say what's going to happen. And you can no longer do nothing of what you wanted. You know what I'm saying? There was a whole video about this.
A really good interview with Putin. Put it in here if you can find it. They asked Putin what he thinks about Trump when Trump first won. And they said, what do you think about Trump and all his ideas? And Putin said, Trump seems like a smart man. He has lots of good ideas. But I've sat through 5 presidents now. And when the people in black suits come and explain to him how things in America work, he'll never finish that.
В темных, как у меня, костюмах, но только не с красным галстуком, а с черным или с темно-синим. И начинают объяснять, как нужно делать.
They tell them how the whole system is supposed to be run. And you can't do nothing about it. It doesn't matter. And if you try to go against that whole agenda, guess what? You get popped. Just like it happened to JFK. You know what I'm saying? So, at the end of the day, let's just say that Trump really didn't want no new wars. It doesn't matter. It's not up to Trump. It's not up to Trump. It's never up to Trump. It's never up to the president. The president is just a puppet.